morning, I'm going to talk a little bit about discomfort. I think we all know what discomfort is. It's that general feeling of uneasiness that you get sometimes. Depending on how physical your manifestations are, you may feel your palms get a little sweaty. You might start to feel kind of itchy and twitchy. Might be fluttering in your stomach. We talk about butterflies. Those are all symptoms of being uncomfortable. Symptoms of discomfort. And these can happen for a lot of different reasons. They can happen when you go to a new place. If you're a student, if you're a child and you go to a new school. First time you go there, you might feel some discomfort. When you're starting a new year, you have new teachers. You might feel discomfort. When you go to a new church, or a different church, and you're among people you don't know, that might cause you some discomfort too. Or a new job, or a new place. If you're driving and you're going somewhere that you don't really know, and you're driving around and you know you're kind of lost, that can cause discomfort. A lot of things that can make us uncomfortable sometimes. So, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. Thank you. Good example. Being put in circumstances that you're not expecting. And having the spotlight on you all of a sudden can make you feel a little uneasy. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Sometimes it's just a temporary feeling and we get past it. Sometimes, personal defense experts will tell us, sometimes it's a good thing because it warns you that there's something a little off. We're told to trust our gut feelings, trust our instincts. And sometimes, that sense of discomfort may just be telling us that it's an opportunity to learn something. So this morning, I'll tell you now, I might make you a little uncomfortable. Other than Rachel, she's already uncomfortable. But not by putting you on the spot, or putting you in a different place, by challenging you with a question. You think, well, what's uncomfortable about a question? You ask these harebrained questions all the time. But the implications to the question are what might make you uncomfortable. So I just want you to be aware of that. The question comes from today's gospel lesson. And it's kind of hidden in the background. But the question is it possible for Jesus to learn something he didn't know? Did Jesus learn something that he didn't know? And at first blush you might think, well, sure, he's human. Why not? We all learn. But then you have to remember, Jesus is the Son of God. He's part of the Trinity that we worship. When we think of God, we think of omniscience. We think of being all-knowing. And if Jesus is the Son of God, and God's all-knowing, then what could he not know? What could he learn from us? It's kind of a strange question. I want to set the stage for you a little bit. Remember, Jesus, we've talked about this over the last couple weeks, Jesus and his disciples had fled Judea because the authorities were kind of on their trail and it was getting to be a little uncomfortable for them. They'd gone back to Galilee, where Jesus was from, hoping that he might find refuge there while he preached. And while they're there, they find out that John the Baptist is dead. And while they're there, they go to Jesus' hometown, Nazareth, the place he grew up, or at least the place he grew up after he got back from Egypt. The place where his family is, his friends from childhood. And it's like Cheers, the place where everybody knew his name, and he goes there. And he preaches in the synagogue. And all of a sudden, these people who had grown up with him, or he had grown up with, were not so friendly anymore. You know, they were saying, who's Jesus? Come on, he's the son of Joseph. Why is he preaching to us? What does he know? So Jesus and the disciples leave Nazareth. And they go out into the countryside and they find themselves wandering from town to town, only they're not alone because they have people following them, people coming out from the towns. These are people who want to hear what Jesus has to say, unlike his friends in Nazareth. More than that, they're people who want to see miracles. Because they've heard of this Jesus and they want to see these wonders that he works. And all of this was just piling on Jesus. We can only believe that he had to be tired. He had to be tired of this constant pursuit from people who wanted to be healed or exorcised or entertained. It must have seemed like this whole region kind of wanted a piece of him, and he was starting to feel like there just wasn't this much left to give. And then this Canaanite woman appears. And she's desperate. She is desperate. She is insistent that he hear her. She starts out at the fringes of the crowd and she's yelling to Jesus, Jesus, you have to heal my daughter. And he ignores her, kind of hoping she'll go away. But she just keeps pushing her way forward and she keeps saying, Jesus, you have to heal my daughter. And he ignores her. And the disciples come to him and they say, Jesus, she's this woman. You've got to do something. She's being a pain in the butt. She keeps forcing her way toward you. And remember, she was a Canaanite. That meant she was not a daughter of Israel. She was a foreigner. She was a woman. So she was pretty darn low in the social status. So when Jesus finally does address her, the exchange that they have is almost, on his end anyway, kind of snarky. Because she asks him to save her daughter, and he says, no, that's not my job. I'm sent here to save the children of Israel. You are not a child of Israel, so too bad. And she presses him again. You're the only hope, Jesus. You have to save my daughter. She's pleading with him. It's her last hope. And his answer again is almost dripping with contempt. He says, I am here for Israel. I'm completing the covenant that God has with Israel. You don't take the food and throw it to the dogs. The word he uses for dogs is Canaanite. In an ancient Greek, it's not just a dog, but it denotes a little worthless dog. Dogs already were not very highly regarded by the people of Israel, but the Canaanite were those little yappy worthless dogs that had no use. I looked at them the way my grandmother looked at the little miniature dachshund we got when I was a kid. We got Louie. She said, "Why would you get a dog like that? It looks like a big rat." And it's a shocking answer. Not just for the content necessarily, but also for the style. Jesus is being very sarcastic here. And it just doesn't fit with what we know about Jesus. Because he has been sarcastic in the past. He's been kind of snarky, but that's been with Pharisees, and with Sadducees, and with people who were in power. He doesn't speak this way to people who are powerless. So it's kind of uncomfortable to read. And we know that Jesus could not have been feeling comfortable in this position. But that's the moment when he says you don't feed the dogs, you don't give the food to the dogs when the children need it. That's the moment when Jesus learns something. And I have to believe that it was a moment that was set up by God Father. And that it was a moment inspired by the Holy Spirit, because in this moment when Jesus is gathering himself in, taking everything in, trying to turn inward, the woman, this Canaanite, reaches out to him and grabs him by the soul and forces him to look at her and to look outward. And she says, "Yes, you're right, but even the dogs, even the little yippy, useless dogs, get to eat the crumbs from the master's table." That was the moment. That was the moment when Jesus appears to have learned something. Because that's the moment when it seems as though he had a sudden revelation. From this moment of great discomfort that he had a sudden revelation of the true scope of his ministry. That he was not just sent for the Jews. Not just sent to redeem the people of Israel. But that he was sent for everybody. He was sent for all of humanity. And of course, from that revelation, he then grants her request. He remarks on her great faith and says, "Yes, taken care of." So everything points to Jesus learning something from his experience. So if Jesus can learn, what does that say to us? It says that maybe everything we know is not everything there is to know. I think it says that revelation is always possible. And that revelation can come from interacting with people who make us uncomfortable. It can come from being in situations that make us uneasy. It can come in unexpected ways from unexpected people. God can take us into these situations for a purpose. God can expose us to situations and to people for a reason. And it's all around us if we have the heart to see it. The chance for our spirits to grow is always there. It's in places that we don't necessarily want to look. But it's there. You know, we look at the world and we think sometimes that we know exactly what's happening. You know, we look at a place like Ferguson, Missouri, and And we kind of stand away from it. We stand on the heights and we look down and we think we know exactly what's happening. You know, we know who's right and who's wrong, who did what to who, and what should be done about it. Do we? Really? What can we learn by listening to somebody else? What could we learn by rising above what we think we know and trying to find out what we don't know? What could we learn by chancing the discomfort of admitting our ignorance or admitting our bias? Admitting that maybe the life we've led so far doesn't lend itself to making sound judgments about people in other times and in other places. People in other circumstances. Jesus, who certainly knew what he was about in his ministry, suddenly discovered something that he did not know. He discovered that even the Son of God can still learn a thing or two in the right circumstances. And if Jesus can learn, then why can't we? Why can't we learn to put our biases aside? Why can't we learn to love others unconditionally? Why can't we reach out in friendship and support and understanding and healing instead of judgment? The answer, of course, is we can. It's not easy. It makes us uncomfortable sometimes. But we can. If we look around our neighbors and our world, places where we live are here to teach us a thing or two. But are we going to listen? Are we going to learn? And then if we do listen and if we do learn, are we going to act on what we've learned?